Well, we're at the beginning of 2022, and I wanted to do something a little bit different. I'm not quite sure if I've done these in the past, but these are 10 albums that I'm really looking forward to in 2022. Now, most of these have been kind of hushed and whispered starting last year, so these are just albums from pretty reputable bands that I'm excited for. They're not in any particular order, they're just kind of as I was thinking about them. And the first one is from Jethro Tull, the the Zealot Gene. So this will be actually their first album in over 20 years or almost 20 years. Over 20 years, depending on if you include the Jethro Tull Christmas album, which was kind of their last album. Now, this isn't to say that Ian Anderson, kind of the spearheader of Jethro Tull, has been quiet. This just means that this is the first Jethro Tull album, because Ian Anderson has been doing a lot of music on his own. And some hits and some not so great. So I'm just interested to see what the music sounds like when it's a Jethro Tull album versus when it's an Ian Anderson album, because yeah, we're going to see. So the next one that I'm really excited for is Welcome to the Planet from Big Big Train, and this one comes as a little bit of a bittersweet. You know, this is the last one that we had with David London on lead vocals, and it'll be very interesting to see where the band goes from here, but I'm still very excited about this. This is coming off of the momentum that was Common Ground. So kind of like the 1-2 punch of Common Ground and Welcome to the Planet, because they both look like very, very similar with all the hands holding each other. I mean, if this one is just as good as Common Ground, I'm going to be excited for it because I really enjoyed Common Ground. I felt like it built off of the momentum from Grand Tour. Yeah, I'm just looking forward to this one, and I only have to wait like a couple weeks for it. Another one that I'm kind of looking forward to is the new Flower Kings album by Royal Decree. Now, these later Flower Kings records have been a little bit hit and miss. I mean, Waiting for Miracles I still think is their worst album, but Islands was a pretty good time. It was a little bit long, and I think it would have serviced for some like really longer stretches of music, but it's seeming as though, well, we're kind of getting the same on this one. It seems like there are two albums and nothing longer than 7 minutes. So we'll see. Looks like we're getting more of the same in terms of track lengths and track numbers. But yeah, I'm still pretty excited. Another one that I'm really actually looking forward to is Another World from Southern Empire. I loved their second album from Southern Empire, Civilization. Their self-titled work from 2016 was okay. It was pretty good, serviceable retro prog, but man, Civilization really knocked my socks off in 2018. So I'm really excited for this one. I'm hoping that they continue the energy that they had from Civilization, because man, that was a great record. Another album that I'm sure none of you are surprised is going to be on this list is the new Porcupine Tree album. I'm really interested to hear what this one's going to sound like. It's been, well, almost like 10 years since we got The Incident. And it looks like Colin Edwin isn't coming back. It looks like it's just Richard Barberi and Gavin Harrison. And I mean, oh, and of course, Stephen Wilson. But yeah, this new one of Closure/Continuation will be very interesting to see how they kind of deal with the concept of closure of the Porcupine Tree discography, but also the continuation of it. Is this a chapter in a new Porcupine Tree legacy, or is it the closure that we were kind of hoping for? Even though I thought that The Incident did a pretty good job of closing everything off. Yeah, I'm more curious than excited for this album. The other one that I'm actually really looking forward to is the kind of conglomeration between Nick DeVargilo, Neil Morse, and Ross Jennings of Torilica. This one, I'm just, again, really curious as to what this is going to sound like. Nick has played with Spock's Beard and a lot of other bands, a Big Big Train, and Neil Morse being, again, Spock's Beard, his own work, so many other big groups. And Ross Jennings from Haken, his own self-titled stuff, Novena. All three of them are like really big singers. So I'm looking forward to some pretty good 3-part harmonies on this record. I'm really looking forward to a little bit more of like a singer-songwriter stuff, especially when I heard Ross Jennings solo stuff from, A Shadow of My Future Self from this year. I'm kind of getting a good idea of what this album is going to sound like. It'll be interesting to see how prog this record will be, but I wouldn't be surprised to hear more of like a kind of like a Crosby, Stills, and Nash idea on this. You know, some really good harmonization, that really full-bodied harmonizations in that sense. And speaking of Spock's beard and whatnot, Pattern Seeking Animals is putting out a new album this year that I'm pretty excited for. I wasn't as much a fan of their first two records as I know a lot of people are. I felt like it hugged a little too close to the Spock's beard essence within the mid-2000s, but I'm always excited for new music from them, and I'm hoping that they've taken the time to kind of grow a little bit and also try to find what their sound is outside of the Spock's beard mold. So pretty excited about that one as well. Another one that I'm pretty excited for that was promoted all through last year was Marillion's next album, An Hour Before It's Dark. Their last few albums have been, again, like most of the albums that have been founded on this list, a little bit hit and miss. I loved Sounds That Couldn't or Can't Be Made. Wasn't a big fan of Fear, no matter how many times I return to it. I know a lot of people think it's their best work, but for me, I don't know. It just never really connected with me. But I still loved, as I mentioned, Sounds That Can't Be Made. So I'm just kind of, again, curious as to what this one's going to sound like. I hope it's a little bit more grabbing of me, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I'm always excited whenever Marillion puts out a new album. I think this is going to be like their 20th album. So, geez. Another one that I am always excited for is Devin Townsend, and I think he's coming out with Lightwork this year. I know that he put out Snuggles and The Puzzle as like a cathartic release, and those albums were less of an album and more like an artwork and a representation of what these past couple of years have been within the pandemic and all the lockdowns and the toll that it's taken as a collective whole. So I'm excited to hear kind of the sounds and the music that is on the other side of that for Devin Townsend, because I know he's been working on this one for quite a while. So, and whenever Devin puts out new music, you know I have to listen to it. So very excited for that one. And the final album that I want to talk about that I'm pretty excited for is the new Weather Systems album, If It'll Be Seen. So for those of you that don't know, this is kind of like the continuation of Anathema or Atema from Daniel Kavanagh. He thinks of this as like the spiritual continuation of the Atema project. I'm very excited to hear this. Like, I always love Daniel's music. It's much more emotional and kind of soundscapey in that sense. And if this is going to be like a spiritual continuation of Anathema, I'm pretty excited for that. And I'm really excited to kind of feel what that sounds like. You know, I feel like it's going to be much more impressionistic. I feel like it's going to be a lot more setting of moods, but I won't know until I hear it. I don't like if it is a spiritual successor of Anathema, which has gone on continuous hiatus, then I think we're in for a very big treat. And anyway, those are my 10. Those are my 10 albums that I know hopefully will be released this year. We'll see how many of those albums end up on my top 10 list. We'll see how many of them wind up on my disappointment lists. That's about it for me. Which albums are you really looking forward to for 2022? Let me know about all those by commenting down below. And that's all I've got. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.